Well, hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I am Susan, your hostess. Today, we're in our kitchen. We're going to be canning some fresh green beans with potatoes and a little bit of salt, fat back. And I'm going to tell you how to do this because you're adding meat to this. So green beans, and I'm going to do the raw pack method. So green beans would typically be processed for 20 minutes for pints and 25 minutes for quarts. Potatoes, let me look up potatoes real quick. It's not too far over. Potatoes would process for a pint for 35 minutes and a quart for 40 minutes. But meat, you would process 75 minutes for a pint and 90 minutes for a quart. So we're going to be adding some meat to this today. So we are indeed going to process this for 75 minutes because I'm doing pint jars. We went to the local Amish community, and the reason before I get into that, I pulled out my fall home preserving complete book. You can look up the recipes for the green beans. It's on page 386. And the potatoes are on page 392. And of course the meat is on in a separate chapter. So anyway, I snapped my beans and washed them thoroughly, and I set them in water in the refrigerator last night. I've got very close to 1 gallon. So y'all can see them there. And because potatoes are a starch vegetable, I peeled them, I washed them thoroughly, then I put them in fresh water 2 or 3 times for about 20 to 30 minutes to pull all that starch out. And then I put fresh water in there and I stored them in the refrigerator overnight as well. And so I've got a little less than a half a gallon of those. So we're going to get these rinsed, drained, and mixed together. We are going to pack our jars with this, but I'm going to drop the meat into the bottom of my jars. And this is a bacon ends that we get from our local butcher that does not use preservatives. So I've already cut that up into little pieces. There's some fat, some meat in there. And we're going to put some of that in each one of my jars, and then we're going to get started with loading those jars up with all those good vegetables. And before I begin, I want to tell you that I did chunk my potatoes up in pretty good sized chunks because you're going to be pressure canning this for so long you don't want your potatoes to just melt away. That potato's got a little bad spot on it. I'm going to cut that off. Because I'm going to be using raw meat, I'm going to use some tongs to drop them into my jars. Then we're going to backfill this with my fresh vegetables that are raw. Then we're going to fill my jars with water. So I've got some little fat pieces I'm going to drop in each one of my jars first. Get some of that out of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in some meat. And I've got several pieces cut. I might as well use them up. It'll just add flavor to the vegetables. Okay. So I've got my meat in the jars, and I'm going to try to put some potatoes and some green beans in each of these jars. Let me grab my funnel. My hopes is to get at least 6 pints today. If I get 8, I'm great. If I have any leftovers, they're going to be cooked up for supper. So we're just going to start loading our jars. And I want to get in some green beans as well as my potatoes. And I want a 1-inch headspace. So I'm going to be pushing these down into the jar and kind of packing them in there to make sure that I'm getting about that amount. Now you could just can the potatoes separately and put them with your green beans when you're done. When you're ready to cook, you can do that as well. This is just enough for my husband and I. It's just the two of us here, so I usually can, according to just the two of us. If family shows up, I can always pull out more pints. And I'll probably be able to go back in and backfill some of this when I add the water. I dropped a green bean. Okay. I've already pulled my water. I'm just going to fill my jars up to the 1-inch space. I'm going to debubble. And if I have any green beans that are outside that parameter, I will pull them out. You can always check your gauge with this. The last tooth would be 1 inch, but we're going to debubble first. Get those green beans down into the liquid. If I need to add more water, I can. The reason that you rinse your potatoes so much is you want to get the starch out, or you'll have a cloudy presentation on your shelf, and your potatoes will retain all that extra starch. So this is one way to do this. So this jar's got a little bit too much water in it. So we just measure. That's got a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drain just a little bit of water off. This one's got a little bit too much water. Okay. Next, I'm going to wipe my rims with some vinegar. Remember, it's got fat in there. It's got a little bit of meat in there, so we want to make sure these rims do not have any fat on them, so our lids will seal. And my lids are clean. I'm going to get them on my jars. And then we're going to band these up and get them into a cold canner. Remember, we're dealing with raw vegetables, raw meat, cold water in our jars. So in our canner, I've also got it up to the mark for the water, which is about 3 inches for this canner. And I've got my canner centered on my burner, so we're good there. Always center your lid with 4 fingers. Put a finger on the middle so that your band doesn't move, or your lid doesn't move. Finger tight, then you finger tight it with 3 fingers and into the canner. That's what it looks like. The meat's on the bottom. My canner holds 8 pints. It is a Presto 16-quart canner. Last jar. And I could run a second canner and finish out these potatoes and green beans, but I'm going to cook them up. And it'll be a little side for our supper one night. So I've got my canner loaded, and the manufacturer always suggests that you grease the gasket and the rim. You always look through the peephole, and you should see light. And you line your arrows up, and your canner should align very easily. I got it turned the wrong way. And seal the canner. Now I'm going to turn my heat on. I do a medium-high heat on this canner. You do it according to what your stove will handle to bring it up to temperature kind of quickly. So we go to about a medium-high on this. I'm going to let this vent for 10 minutes. After it vents for 10 minutes, I'm going to apply my weight, which is for 10 pounds of pressure. We're going to pressure can this for 90 minutes. The pressure is according to your altitude. The time, I think, remains the same. But always check your ball canning book to be sure that you're getting correct directions on any of my canning videos or anyone else's canning videos. Canners today are safer than they were years ago. They've got a little safety valve here or right here. This will pop if it gets too much pressure in it. It's also got a little valve here, a little button over here that will pop up when pressure starts to build up in your canner. And then once you see this jiggling on top of your canner, you're going to set your time for the time that you're supposed to can at. Today it's 75 minutes because it contains meat. So we have a good head of steam going, and we're going to let this steam for 10 minutes, and then we'll put our weight on there. And once it starts to jiggle, we'll set our timer for 75 minutes because I'm doing pints. And I've got a nice pot of green beans with potatoes over here cooking down. That'll be yummy for supper. Okay, my canner has come off pressure. We're going to open this up. We always open it away from us because it is full of hot steam. I'm going to go ahead and remove my weight. And the moment of truth. We have green beans, y'all. I don't think any of my jars broke. Wonderful. We have 8 pints of green beans going on the shelf. And my green beans for supper is done. So I know exactly what they taste like. I've already taken a bite. It is delicious, y'all. Yum, yum. They are hot. We leave these set out on our counter for 12 to 24 hours. Allow them to completely cool. Remove the bands, wash the jars, check the seals, and then we put them in our pantry for long-term storage. So these are 8 meals ahead of us that I don't have to do a lot of prepping for. Thank you everybody for watching, and may you be fully blessed.